Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video, I want to take a closer look at the proposed crafting and fabrication system and highlight some potential issues it might face. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And don't forget to check out the Comm Relay podcast or my community tools for Star Citizen. And here is a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and everything else I do. One of the major planned features for Star Citizen is crafting. CAG want to allow players to craft pretty much any item that exists in the game. So how is this supposed to work? Well, to craft, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need some materials, the appropriate blueprint, and a fabricator. So let's take a closer look at each one of these. Materials are exactly what you think they are. They are the raw resources you gather in the reverse by mining or salvage or even farming and hunting. I imagine CAG will add a few more ways to gather materials. A fun one would be archaeology, which would tie into exploration. I think data could also become a form of material, but I imagine CAG will reserve that for finding blueprints and speeding up blueprint research. And to close off the material part of crafting, every blueprint and item will have multiple tiers, with the higher tiers having better stats. So it makes sense that materials will also have various tiers. And we will be able to create higher tier materials by using refineries, which is an interesting evolution of the refinery gameplay, and I'm very curious to see how it affects refinery ships. Which actually brings us to blueprints, which is the second stage of crafting. To craft an item, you need to own the appropriate blueprint. The important thing to know here is that right now CAG are planning to tie blueprints to your account rather than having them as a physical item. I imagine you will still be able to find physical disks that contain blueprints, which you can then upload to your database. But I would also like to see CAG give us the ability to trade or share blueprints. Now, since we have multiple tiers of items and materials, we also need multiple tiers of blueprints. So how do you get a higher tier blueprint? Well, so far we know of two ways to do this. You can either find them or get them as a mission reward, or you can research the blueprint that you have to upgrade it to a higher tier. Research involves spending some resources, meeting some requirements, and waiting some time. The requirements are very interesting. The one CAG showed off at CitizenCon shows us the general theme they're thinking of. They showed us some options that required the player to craft an item with certain stats by using better materials or to use the item in a certain way. And then we finally get to the last part of crafting, the fabricator and crafting itself. A fabricator is the device that allows players to craft. As far as we know, they come in a few sizes, from items to furniture and ships. We don't know the specifics yet, but CAG mentioned that everyone will have access to a fabricator in a communal area, similar to a refinery that we know now. I would be interested to see how CAG handled this. Having players pay for using a communal fabricator could be an interesting money sink, and could incentivize players to set up bases or homesteads and build fabricators there. But that finally brings me to the problem with crafting. If we're able to craft everything, why would we buy anything? At the same time, why would ship manufacturers allow us to build their ships? And why do massive shipyards like the one at Orison exist if anyone can craft pretty much any ship using a fabricator? Now, that's a lot of questions and potential problems and plot holes. So let's sit back and let's start from the beginning. Why would we buy items if we can simply craft them? This one is actually pretty simple: convenience. To craft an item, you need to find or buy the required materials. You also need the right blueprint, and then it will also take a while to craft. So for common items, it makes way more sense to buy them and save your crafting materials for higher tier items. Now, there might be some exceptions to this. For example, in Pyro or Nyx, where supply lines are unreliable, it might not be possible to mass produce these items. So crafting even lower tier items will be cost effective for the player. Next, why would ship manufacturers allow us to craft their ships? This one is a bit difficult. In a capitalist future, they wouldn't. But in Star Citizen, there might be a few reasons. Maybe it's too difficult to get freshly made ships to certain places, so it's easier to let people craft them instead. Alternatively, maybe all ship blueprints are originally stolen from the manufacturer and then used to craft ships. Or maybe ship blueprints are a sort of a license to manufacture that given ship, and they can only be bought for a large sum of money, or they require a lot of reputation to obtain. But I still feel that giving players the ability to just make more ships is a bit unbalanced. So what are some ways that this could be fixed? Well, one way would be to give ships that were purchased from a ship dealer some kind of a temporary warranty. But that would go against what CIG proposed at CitizenCon when explaining the insurance changes. The other way would be to introduce a licensing cost, meaning that every ship you manufacture from a licensed blueprint doesn't just require materials, but also a credit payment to the original manufacturer that would be some fraction of the retail price. This could, in theory, prevent players from crafting and selling hundreds of ships. Then again, my assumption is that crafting a ship will require a ton of materials even at the lowest tier, which by itself could serve as a pretty decent balancing mechanism. And finally, why do massive shipyards like Orison exist if ships can be simply crafted in a fabricator? Well, I see two reasons. First, it seems like not every ship can be made in a fabricator. We were shown a Javelin being built in a space station dry dock, so some ships will probably require similar facilities. Also, I think that the lower explanation will be that shipyards make use of production lines so they can build ships faster and cheaper compared to fabricators. Which would make sense. I imagine that crafting a low-tier item will actually be more expensive than buying it. But of course that depends on where you are. In Terra or Stanton where things are mass-produced, that might be the case. But in Pyro or Nyx, where supply lines are unreliable, crafting might be the cheaper option. And the last thing I want to talk about is material quality. CIG mentioned that the quality of the material used in crafting will affect the stats of the final product. This made me think of a couple possible issues with the system. First, displaying the different materials with different quality and the general UI involved in this. CIG don't have a very good track record with UI, so I'm just hoping we won't end up with a material inventory UI with hundreds of entries. And that directly ties into the quality rating of the materials. I understand that what was showed was very early concept, but what CIG showed was a numerical value, and it seemed like there can be quite a range of those available as well. I think the better way would be to use the material quality rating they showed elsewhere using the low quality, medium quality, and high quality ratings. This would actually partially solve the UI issue as well, but it would also be helpful if as a part of refining, CIG allowed us to refine low quality materials into higher quality materials. And with that being said, that's all for today. What do you think? Should players be able to craft ships? What's the best approach for material quality? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.